Before we get started, I have a question. So, back when I started in real estate, they told me that people would buy or sell every 4 to 5 years. How many of you have been in your home over 10? That's 2. How many over 20? Over 30? Oh my gosh, 40? Wow. So you guys are against the odds that I was told for real estate. And so one of the things, I think the longer we stay in a house, the harder it gets to think of moving. So anyway, the topic today, selling your family home as value or convenience. Rick is my best friend, my husband, my business partner, and my co-conspirator in starting the seminars. So I'd like to invite him up here.
Hey, good morning, Seattle. I mean, Encinitas. Doggone rain. Anyhow, we're going to go through a little bit of this, but first I'm just going to start with a quick story. My nephew was visiting us here in Encinitas. He's from Arizona. And oddly enough, the guy was like in his 20s at the time. It's the first time he'd ever been to San Diego. And so we're walking around my backyard, and I got a bit of a view of Liebenhain in the back. This is just Village Park. Anyhow, he's looking at all these houses, and he says, "Hey, Uncle Rick, what are these houses worth?" And I said, we're going to have to ask the owners. I don't know. He said, "Oh, okay." He goes, "What's your house worth?" And I thought about it for a minute. "What's my house worth?" And I go, "To me?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, $5 million. He goes, "Wait a minute, these houses are selling for $5 million? I said, "Hell no." I said, "But if I'm gonna move, I want $5 million because there's no value to moving." So, and that's where I'm coming from. So I'm gonna break this up into 3 parts this time. The sales options for single family residences is gonna be a lot of what we talked about last year. Determining a list price is a new thing because the market seems to be changing a bit. And then finally, psychological effects of selling. I've been working on that one for 20 years now. And where'd my partner go? Anyhow, it's something that I'm a little nervous about, but it's really the way humans make decisions. That's what that whole thing was about. Thank you. All right. So, in your book, a lot of this stuff you guys have, just take notes next to it, and then I'll be finished here in about another 40 minutes, and then we'll ask all the questions right at the end. Okay? All right. Convenience. That's one of the ones where the guy's going to sell your house for you. And they will pay higher than an average sales price. And then value has to do with how much something is worth, either in terms of cash or importance. That's why I told you that little story. There wasn't, even at $5 million, think about it, I gotta give up half of it in taxes. Do I really wanna move? Maybe for $7 million, I don't know. Anyhow, this is my favorite one. This is the guy that you see on TV, I think about at least once a day. Buy your house truly as is, and it tells you that there's no commissions, no sales fees, no open houses, no repairs, no cleanup.
Yeah, right.
Most of that is true sometimes. That's the deal you're gonna get. But these are 3 of them that I followed through. Now, I know those numbers are correct because they come off the MLS. It's part of public records. So when you look at using somebody to buy your house, they're going to probably offer you somewhere between 65 and 75% of the list price. And that's how they get paid. They haven't done a lot this year because interest rates are going up. And when they buy those houses for when they purchase it for $1.5 million, that loan is going to cost them a lot of money. $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 probably easy. So that's a cost that they have that if you're doing it yourself, you don't have. These 3 are a little different. I know these numbers are correct because we did these. we did the rehab, we did the sale, and you can see how much more money goes to the seller. But, so instead of the property flipper getting all that money, the sellers are getting that money. On some of these, the rehab costs were paid by us, and then we just got paid back when the people sold the house. Some of them, they paid for the cost. Both of them work. The flippers do a lot of probates, so if there's not a lot of people getting older, they don't have anything to do. But right now, they're backed off mainly because of interest rates. Let's see. Now, that other slide where I said that you didn't have to pay commissions, you didn't have to pay, clean up all that stuff, somebody does end up paying for that. And that's the person that bought that home. So it is really paid for. So one of the things that people always ask me, the first question I get is, what's my home worth? And the second question is I get, what should I do to my house? That begs two questions. First of all, when are you moving? If you're not moving for another 5 years, 10 years, then what you should do to your house is what you want it done. If you want a bathroom remodeled, remodel it, enjoy it, right? But if you're planning on moving in 2 years, don't do that, because you're not gonna get a chance to enjoy it. You'd spend money on it, but you're not gonna get a chance to enjoy it, if that makes sense. Let's see, selling as is with full disclosures. Now I talk about as is a lot, and I usually talk to the buyer's agents about it when they're buying one of our listings. Because a lot of times, we tell them, look, paragraph 7 says, the home is being sold as is. That's what you handed me. That's what I handed my seller. We're not gonna do any repairs. It's being sold as is. I usually tell them that before they even give us an offer. And believe it or not, a lot of times they come back and say, well, you know the way buyers are, so here's our request for repairs. And I said, well, you know the discussion we had originally, so here's cancellation of escrow. We're going back in the market. In a market like this, where it is totally seller-driven, the seller has the leverage, the seller decides what they want to do. And it's just the way it is. Now, in other kind of markets, that's a little different. But right now, when somebody hands you an offer and says, well, I want to buy your home as is, and you go, yeah, okay. You know, what are you going to pay me for it, right? You work from there. Not, what are you going to pay me for it, and then give them another $10,000 in the back end just because they had a friend that told them that that's what they got, so they should get it. So I really want to stress not only as is, but full disclosure. Most of the lawsuits in California right now are real estate lawsuits. Most of those real estate lawsuits have to do with the fact that the seller did not disclose things that they knew was wrong with the property. You guys, we live in North County. It doesn't matter what's wrong with the property. If your property is the only one available, guess what? They're gonna have to buy it as is. But you really wanna tell them everything that's wrong with it. Because it's this early stage when people know what they're getting into, it makes the transaction a lot more comfortable for those buyers. Because if you look at what the monthly payment is on a $2 million home, you know, you're talking about $15,000 a month, right? So you have a lot of attorneys out there right now following up with new homeowners to see exactly how they feel about what they bought. And I've seen the speech, I mean, what they get, right? It's pretty ruthless, but attorneys like living in San Diego too. So that's why we got it. Oh, the one thing I didn't put on that I'm not gonna talk about is for sale by owner. If anybody wants to talk about that on outside or something, I'll be more than, I've helped counsel some folks that tried selling by themselves, and I have taken over some things where they tried selling and things just didn't work out. every transaction, believe it or not, is different. We've done something close to like 500. I can't think of two that were the same. Every seller wants things a little different, every buyer wants things different. So you have to be able to make those moves during escrow when that thing's all, because a lot of times things happen to people and they go, I didn't expect this. Well, of course they didn't, because the agent didn't tell them. So what you want to make sure of is that when you're, I'll give you an example of a disclosure that almost went south. The seller did not tell me, they did not put in the disclosures, that the pump on their jacuzzi was bad, right? We tested it, but it was bad, right? It worked, so we figured it was okay. Well, as soon as the owner moves in, it doesn't work. And so he calls the service guy that was working on it. Service guy says, yeah, you need a new pump. I've been telling these guys that for the past 5 years. That came this close to a lawsuit. I mean, the seller went, it's not my problem. I said, oh, it's about to be your problem. Because this is not one of those problems where he just has to buy the pump. He also is going to get, if it goes to court, he's probably going to get hit with some punitive damages for that. So it's not, I think the pump was like $250, right? Pulling an attorney, I mean, their first hour is $450. So, you know, it just gets worse and worse. Disclose everything. Okay, now, this is it. We got an offer. Everybody gets really excited when they get an offer. This is where I think real estate agents should earn their money. You've got to be able to look through every piece of that. One of the things that you couldn't see on what we handed out was, and this happens a lot, this one here. Of course we can't afford it. A $500,000 house with a 30-year mortgage only costs 6 cents per minute. That happens. That happens during escrow. And all of a sudden, that buyer starts thinking, holy cow, that's a lot of money. And then they start looking for things. So the first things they go after is disclosures. We don't want the house because of that. They start looking at a property inspection report, right? Maybe we can get some more money there. That really happens. About 25% of escrows fall out. They fall apart. Money's a big one of them, but in order of what usually is happening is inspection failures. There's something wrong with a home that the seller didn't know about or the seller didn't want anybody to know about, and now there's a $15,000 HVAC system that needs installed. There's no heating, ventilation, air conditioning. That's hard to sell. Home insurance surprises. A lot of you guys are now familiar with, we've got to keep the areas clear around our houses, right, because of the fires. And some people are also discovering that their homeowner's insurance is not being renewed because a lot of these people can't afford the price of to replace properties at the prices we're selling. Buyer financing rejections. That seems to be coming back a little bit now. Again, it's the higher interest rates and more rules. What we try to do when we get an offer is the first thing that we'll do is take it right to the lender that's making the loan and interview that lender. We want to know, do these people have the money? How far have you gone? What do you know about them, right? That's the way we solve that one. As far as title insurance surprises, that's not as often, but we usually are taking care of that even before we get into escrow. Lowball appraisals. I haven't seen one of those in a while, but they tell me that they're still out there. All right, now the fun one is determining a list price. A list price, that's not usually what you're going to get for your home. You put your home on the market for $1 million, telling you, even if that's a fair price, somebody's going to come in with a lower offer. Now, if you put your house on the market for $500,000, you'll probably get 50 or 60 different offers. So when you're going through this, the reason that you want to come up with a decent list price is you come up with something low, you're going to get low offers. Come up with what they're seeing. I put this one up here because I want you to get a flavor of what happens in the real estate market over time. You can see we've got that big spike up there. Everybody sort of remembers that one. I'm going to go over that one a little later, but what I want you to look at is when that line's going up, that means it's a seller's market. When that line's going down, that's a buyer's market. This is just an extension of that, but of the end of that last one only went up to like, I think 2012. For the past 12 years, we've been working in a seller's market. Great. I'm a listing agent. I love markets like that. I started where that market was going down. That's where I learned. But I'm putting this up here not to say, look, it's coming down at the end. Hey, it came down at the end here, came down at the end here. That's not important. What's important is when that time comes and as you're getting closer and closer to selling, try to figure out what kind of a market you're in. If you're in a seller's market, pick a higher price. If you're in a buyer's market, pick the same prices that people are already selling at or lower. It's just the nature. Okay. I pulled these up because most of the people, these are addresses for most folks. You can see Cardiff has been increasing, Encinitas has been increasing. That's Carlsbad, that's the southwest section of Carlsbad. But you can see none of these look like they're falling off, but it's another thing you just want to pay attention to. And the next one is, when you hire a real estate agent, you better get something that looks close to this. This was pulled right out of the MLS. I can tell the MLS, I want to see all the 3-4 bedroom properties, 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, lot size of 5,000 to 1,300 square feet, that have sold or are on the market over the past 12 months, bordered by I-5, Encinitas Boulevard, Manchester. So this is pretty much what the system spits out. Now, what you're going to see across the top, most people right away when they see that, they look at that sold price of $2,433,000. That's the one they want to list at. In a seller's market, that's okay. In a buyer's market, there's a really good chance that nobody will show up. What I usually recommend to folks is stick with the median price. You're going to be in good shape. Sometimes people overshoot it. We'll get this off in just right now. Okay. I can see there may be homes that you see for sale in your neighborhood that are not on there, and you're asking, why is that? Maybe the living area is different, maybe the square lot's different. So that's why you're getting what you're seeing there. One of the things that are not on there are the homes that are listed for sale, or the ones that are in escrow. Know why? There aren't any. We have nothing to sell. I mean, right now, nothing. And this is going on. It's tough in Encinitas. I mean, you put a home on the market in Encinitas and look out. It's tough in Cardiff. It's loosening up a bit in some places in Carlsbad, but not much. People still rather live in Encinitas. And the next one is the one that, I'll be frank with you guys on this part, this is scaring the hell out of me. This is something that I've been at for about 20 years. When I first got into real estate, I was a chemical engineer and I sold chemical plants. That was easy, right? Because it's just math and science and a little chemistry, piece of cake. This stuff is different. You're dealing with people's emotions. And we all have those emotions. Some of you guys with the gray hair, with the hair color that I have, you remember what it was. I grew up in the 60s. And we were told, right, when you got hit with a baseball, put some dirt on it, right? Or when you're playing football and you got knocked out and you were laying there for a while, right? Oh, he got his bell rung. Come on, get back in there, right? And there was none of this stuff, you couldn't cry, you couldn't say it hurt, right? Because emotions were not for men. We were taught. Emotions are for the women, right? Guess what? That was wrong. That was totally wrong. So what I'm going to cover is a sample of about 20 years of researching and studying how humans make decisions. Now, most of you are, if this is the first time you're going to go through this, you're not going to like it. I didn't like it. But since we said, never a sales pitch, only the truth, here comes the truth. Christy's shown this to you a lot. What I really want to focus on is what you do not know that you do not know. This is a real big part of psychology now. The stuff that I'm going to be showing you is new. By new, I mean it's about 20 years old. But there's no more of this B.F. Skinner stuff. There's no more of this, who was the German guy with the cigar? I forget. But anyway,
Freud.
thank you, yeah. It's none of the Freud stuff. This is really science. This is neuroscience. This is part of psychology that's now become a science. They can prove this over and over and do it again. Can you give me that one? So, in selling your house, we were talking about accuracy and efficiency. That's easy. Well, I'll tell you what, it's what the human brain is doing to you. And you guys, we all are subject to this. Facts are difficult to get a hold of. I mean, it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort to do the research on things. So what I do, and I'm sure what most of you do, is when you get hit with one of those questions, just check in with the old guy upstairs, and he'll tell you the answer. It's not based on any research. It's based on beliefs. It could be something that somebody told you at a cocktail party, right? And you go, okay, I can get more money when I sell my house if I just do this, or when I buy a house, if I do that, right? That's where that information comes from. It's a belief, and you can't, I've never been able to get somebody away from that belief. The belief is yours. You can do something about that belief, but that's a lot of work too. Oh yeah, here's the fun part. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, I'll start off with that according to neuroscientists, we're only conscious of about 5% of our cognitive activity. So most of our decisions, our emotions and behavior depend on the 95% of the brain activity that goes beyond our conscious awareness. This, boys and girls, is your default mode. This is where you spend most of your time, is letting something else make those decisions, letting something else generate those emotions, letting something else generate your behavior. This guy, this is Daniel Kahneman. When I first read his book, I thought I found the Holy Grail. I highly recommend this book. It's a tough read. But boy, if you want to understand why you think what you think, why you do what you know, he's the one that put it together. And I wanted to steal his quotation here, and I was going to just say, without that being up there, hey, we believe people's lives depend on the decisions they make. So if we can teach them to make better decisions, we can improve their lives. I'm living by that. I really want to help everybody understand that you can make changes to a lot of the things that you automatically do. The other thing about Daniel Kahneman, and I'm going to go into this here in a minute, this piece where he talks about, his theory is that there's a type of error in our thinking, which leads to errors in memory, judgment, and decisions, because of our personal beliefs or feelings. This is not Rick Levander, the chemical engineer. Rick Levander, the chemical engineer, just say, hey, listen, it's simple stuff, man. It's math, it's science, this is the way it works. Build it and run it. I don't want to hear about problems, right? I got away with that for a long time. But that's not what was happening on the other side. The other side, that person was probably insulted, scared, right? Probably didn't trust me, right? Because I didn't care. I didn't think it was about emotions. I thought it was about science. So, let's see. One of the things I missed, I just want to play you back out here. So, our species goes back over 2 million years, And our early hominid predecessors evolved between 2,000, 200,000, and 300,000 years ago. They developed a capacity for language about 50,000 years ago. And we have pretty much the same brain that caveman had 50,000 years ago. Unbelievable, huh? I mean, I know that there's got to be 2 or 3 people out there going, that's baloney. It's not. I mean, there's, again, science backing this up. You are dealing with an old model brain. It works very well. It worked very well back in the caveman days. The things that the cavemen were having to deal with were much more critical to their survival than what you're dealing with. But you're dealing with the same emotions. And they don't make you very happy. But you're having to deal with them because that's what makes you who you are. Now, some people are going to say, well, emotions come from experiences, and some do. But recently, there's too much information saying, nope, those emotions are coming from certain parts of their human body, and you can find it in DNA. So it's not your fault when you are making some of these mistakes. All that's happening is there was a condition that you experienced, that thing in your head said, this is just like that other time. So automatically you reacted just like it was something that happened to you once before. It never happened to you before. It happened to your ancestors, and you're having to live with that. I'd like to say that our tools are better, but decisions, actions, emotions, and behaviors, those are all similar. Getting back to Daniel Kahneman, there's a thing called cognitive bias. And cognitive bias is a systematic thought process caused by the tendency of the human brain to simplify information processing. And man, are you glad you have that. Because you're looking at somewhere between 60,000 and 70,000 thoughts per day. Some of them are the same, some of them are negative, some of them are positive, but it's going to be awful hard to look at each one and analyze each one. That's not what you're built to do. You're analyzed to find something else that happened like it, and that's what you're going to live with. Now, the last time I looked, there are 180 different types of cognitive biases. It's how we're programmed. You can look at it like an algorithm. It's not, but the way people use algorithms, you can just say, that's a cognitive bias. That's another one of my algorithms. Now, I'm going to cover 4 of these cognitive biases that we encounter when we sell. This is when I got to page, I think it was 308 of that book. When I learned this, I said, this is magic. This is telling me why I was having such a hard time helping people sell their home when the bank was taking it away from them. I thought at that time, well, you know, remember that when we had short sales and foreclosures and things? I was having to sit down with people and say, this is what we need to do to get your home sold. And I figured, this is going to be pretty simple. This is what the homes are selling for. This is what, It was brutal. I didn't like learning. I hated real estate at that time, but it was the only job I had. So I'd like to talk about, that's called the endowment effect, that once you own something, not having it becomes more painful because it's a loss. So, decluttering. Everybody hates that one, right? That's because every time you look at something, you go, oh, I'm going to lose this. And so all you thought about was what happened when you got it, right? And you say, well, if I give this up, then I'll lose that thought. That's not true, but that's the way you're wired. And those are the feelings you're going to have. And what I'm going to try to do over the next couple of minutes is push you towards the fact that those feelings are real. Those feelings are being generated by your thalamus. Those feelings are not the best option most of the time. They're old. They're easy to get to. And you're just going to pick that up, that feeling, because you think it's normal. Yeah, it was probably normal 50,000 years ago, but it's not normal with what we're trying to do now. Humans hate to lose. I mean, humans hate losing more than they like winning. We hate to lose. And that's really because people perceive change as a risk. Look at the things that you're going through your mind now, changes that you're thinking of making. And I would bet the first thing that's coming to the forefront is all the bad news. All the bad things are going to happen when you make that change. It's hard to get the good news in there. It's a different way of thinking. I just put this in here because it was fun. I like the color. But this actually happened. This started back in 90, 92, 99. I can't remember. 90. Anyhow, the way this worked is a bunch of scientists, a couple of scientists, walked into the Cornell bookstore and bought all these mugs that they had. They gave these mugs to a bunch of students. Everybody got a mug. And then they said, now go out and sell these mugs. They didn't sell any. The average price that they were being offered was $2.25. But they knew that the mugs were $4.50, the seller, right? But the buyer saw no value at $4.50. They could buy their own, right? At $2.25, maybe that's a value. But they couldn't break through it. This is exactly what happened there. I would show people how the prices went up and how the prices were going down and how to sell their house. They had to be below that last price that was going down. I had very few people agree to that. They actually sold their house in that down area, but they all wanted to list the price a little bit higher. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for the people that are buying it. It will work for the seller, because the seller goes, look, my house is worth more money. Yeah, you're the highest bidder on your home right now. It is worth more money. So that's just a piece of that. So again, just pay attention to what sort of a market we're in. All right, now here is a fun cognitive bias that I'm sure, if you're honest with yourself, you all have. Does anybody here really want to change the way things are? Or would you rather keep things the way they are and have different results? Right? That'd be great. Doesn't work that way. This is not, this is one of the biggest ones that I think I run into every day. I do this. I mean, I'm just as bad as everybody else. When Christy first mentioned that we're going to do this, I said no. And then she said, well, we got to get certified and we got to do all this. I said, I got to spend all that money too? No. Right? But I'll tell you what, I'm glad I'm doing it, mainly because when I help somebody transition to a better lifestyle now, I have a stronger sense of purpose and satisfaction. So these are feelings that I have now that I wouldn't have had if I would have stuck with what I was doing before. It's pretty much, let's see, that's the second one of these. I just like saying his name, Thucydides. Plus, I actually found writings that he did in 450 BC, and his statement in there that was translated, it's a habit of mankind to entrust to careless hope what they long for, and use sovereign reason to thrust aside what they do not. This is how you're making decisions. Hope is not a plan. Hope is a temporary escape. This is one that I find real interesting. And I'm maybe going to go out on a ledge here because my cognitive bias just kicked in. Enough to say, if you look at the way things are in the world today, maybe just look at things the way they are in the United States today. Does it seem some people are thinking one way and some people are thinking a different way? This is confirmation bias, ladies and gentlemen. You've got it, they've got it, I've got it. It is a fact. This is what we're living with. Now, changing this is what we believe. I mean, changing is hard. There are ways to go after it. I'm not going to talk about that here, but I will talk about it when we talk about decluttering. Now, another cognitive bias is when people first get information, the first information they get is the one they're going to run with. Again, the reason for that is it takes less effort. So that's where staging comes from. When people see a home that we've staged, they look at that home, that sticks in their mind. And they leave and they go to the next one. When they go to the next one, they go, oh, it just doesn't look as nice, right? And we've got that stuck in their head until they make a decision to buy something. I was having fun with this one, but this is really important, framing basis. It's the way people react in different ways depending on how the information is presented to them. The simple thing that you'll see in the books is if you're buying beef, and the beef says it's only 15% fat, right? A better way to say that it's 85% beef. and you see that a lot, right? I mean, this stuff is true. This is how we think. I mean, to start changing this, you need to internalize this stuff, and you need to trust that those thoughts in your head are not yours. You're carrying them around, but you're not the one who created them. I pointed out property inspections on this one. This is pretty important. People usually don't do a property inspection until somebody's actually put an offer in on their house. That's bad news, because you never know what you're going to be negotiating with, right? You sold a house, but there were things wrong with it that you didn't know, and then somebody wants you to take care of that, especially with the prices they're paying now. Do those property inspections ahead of time. There's somewhere more than $450 and less than $1,000. I don't care how big your house is. That is important because now you know what you're selling and the buyer knows exactly what they're buying. It makes that process easier. And if you're moving in the next 1 to 3 years, I encourage you to have that done now because you can hire your own tradespeople, right? Buyer doesn't know how much heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system is to put in, but they know that it's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, so it must be really high. So I want $50,000 when probably $18,000 would have done it. You can stay away from that. Plus, then you use that as part of your sales technique when you sell the house, right? Because the guy's looking at, oh, all of these things were wrong, and look at all the things they fixed. I've had people say to me, buyers, agents, saying they felt like they were buying a new house. And they paid a lot more for it. So the next one is my buddy. This is where I really had to come to grips with what emotions are, what emotions do. She's at the top of her field now. I've read that doggone book twice. Probably should read it again. But this is a fabulous statement. You feel what your brain believes. Everything. And I'm trying to find it wrong on this one yet, but she says that every decision that you make starts with an emotion. It doesn't start with, this house is $1 million and it fits my budget. It doesn't start with, I get to move there and have a better yard. It starts with their emotions, right? It starts with that better yard being something from their childhood past that they remember. That's how all this stuff works. And I have two marketers in the back that are gonna hate me for this, but this, a lot of marketing stuff is not paying attention to this. I mean, you've really got to, I mean, nobody really cares that the house has purple carpeting. They care what are their other options, right? It's a different way to think. And so that's why I like her last line. Our brains are not wired for accuracy. They're wired to keep us alive. So when you have those emotions that just pop up all of a sudden, that somebody did something and you're mad at them, you know, he drove me off the road. I'm gonna get this son of a gun, right? That feeling, it's not yours. That feeling came from the caveman a long time ago, right? The example that I heard was, they had about 80, no more than 80 people that would live in a little community, right? And sometimes somebody would want that guy's food. So he'd go over there and take his food, right? Well, there were people in the community watching that. And so the guy that was losing his food was thinking, am I gonna let him treat me this way? Am I gonna let everybody around here look at me as a loser? Anger comes up. I'm gonna fix this. Even though he's twice my size and he can fight better than I can, he's gonna know he's been in a fight, right? But that emotion that came from that long ago, you were, scientists say, you were born with. And so when you get mad at somebody for, even in the grocery store, that's another one. Somebody in the express lane fumbling around with a credit card, right? I don't know about you, but I know what I'm thinking, right? And then they drop their purse or something. Sorry, ladies. Then he drops his wallet or something. And I'm thinking, this guy's a tool. And then by the time he leaves, right, I want a piece of the cashier too. That emotion had nothing to do with what I was doing there. It really didn't. It had to do with an emotion that I'm born with, an emotion that I fight, an emotion that I deal with every day. Let's see.
Would that be true of criminals?
Oh, will you hold that question? I would love to answer that. I'll answer that. By the way, it's in that book. So I'm going to finish here in a second. Can I get the last one? This stuff is not new. It's new that we have cognitive bias. It's new that we can now scientifically test it. It's new that we've got a way to handle it. Those are the new things. But it's still critical thinking. When you have somebody that comes to your door and says, I'm here to fix your hot water heater. Well, let him be there to fix your hot water heater, but start asking questions, right? When he says, well, your hot water heater needs replaced. Good question to ask is why, right? He may know more about hot water heaters than you do, but he may not. It just may be his cognitive bias, seeing this problem before, using the same solution he used on the last 5 people he talked with. He's not a bad person. He's a human. Start treating humans as humans. When somebody tells you, you can get this much more money for your house if you put in pane glass, different windows, right? That's probably not true. But that person that told you that, that's something that he heard, that's something that she experienced, and something that's now sitting in front of you. You guys are all, most of us, and I like to think I'm part of us, are moving into a different part of our lives. We're experiencing things that we haven't experienced before. Start becoming a critical thinker. Start asking, why am I picking that, right? Stick that on your refrigerator door and just try to start thinking that way. The people that are thinking down here, I don't think there's anybody like this in this room. Everybody that I've talked to, I wouldn't put you there. But I think what you want to do is try to push to that top one. Because what I'm going to share with you in decluttering is some of those cognitive biases make you depressed, and they make you extremely anxious. And you can get involved, you can get in the way of some of them. So you don't have to deal with those feelings. They're still going to come at you, but at least you'll know what they are and what to do about them. And with that, if I've offended anybody by talking about the way that the human brain works, I apologize, but I'm just a messenger. I took it from other people. I repurposed it a little differently, but it's a fact. And with that, Christy, would you like to come up here and start asking questions?
On the very back, Rick's got the books that he mentioned.
If you're thinking about reading any of these, you can usually go online and get it, an editorial piece of it. But I'll tell you, that first one changed me. And the second one I'm still fighting with. All right. So with that,
I've got the mic, sorry.
okay.
Now, I have a question, because this has happened to two of my friends, totally different time periods, where this gal was selling her house, and the real estate agent said it has to be this amount. She goes, no, I want it this amount, sorry. And they argued, she finally agreed. Well, it sold at this amount, and this was a while back. Currently, I have a friend who has been vacillating on whether she should sell or not, and now it comes down that she has to sell. And she's had real estate people, to me, in this day and age, especially after seeing that, to me it was super lowball. I said, you're kidding me. It's like 4 acres. It's like, what? I'm not gonna tell you who or where it is. And I said, I thought, because I was thinking of this first person who literally argued with her real estate agent to list it up here and sold. I said, can a seller tell you what they want to list it for?
Listen, I want everybody to hear this loud and clear. Number one, it's your home. Number two, the higher the price, the more work the real estate agent's gonna have to do. What do you care? You're paying them enough money anyhow. So the real estate agents, some, and they're taught this by some of their brokers, get it sold as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Get that check right away, and the best way to do that is drop that price. I don't believe in that at all. Even when I was dealing with people who were losing their homes, right? I mean, I would tell them, let's just price it at this last one that sold, right? And a lot of times I get, no, I want to price it up here, right? And then that usually begs the question from me, if it doesn't sell, what are you going to do, right? And then we might be able to make chances.
I want to thank you for addressing these psychological issues, because that's definitely what is getting in my way after having a home for 32 years when it comes time to declutter and sell and all that. And I want to validate something you said as far as the cognitive bias. I work at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and we have continuing education addressing that, because we're Minnesota nice, and we try to be so good to everyone that we don't realize, because of our upbringing and everything, that we have these cognitive biases that, because we just are automatic, otherwise we, like you mentioned, have to think through every little move and thought. And so thank you very, very much.
Well, thanks for saying that. There's one right here.
Can I just go, Carolyn, I wanted to talk about your question just a minute. One of the things on agents telling somebody what to price it at, you are the boss, whoever the home seller is. As an agent, Rick and I look at, it's like to give the facts of what's happening in the marketplace. And an appraiser does the value based on historical facts. As an agent, we're looking if the market's going up or down, and determining it that way. But we don't know what buyer is out there looking exactly for that home. And so we believe not to say you need to list it at this. A seller often has a gut instinct. They want to try it. We've had ones that have tried pie in the sky, and after a couple weeks it was pretty evident, and you can bring it back down. But as a seller, when you're talking to your real estate agent and they say, do it at this price, remember you're the boss. You're the boss. There was a hand over here.
Right, this lady right here, you had a question
Oh,
earlier?
I'll ask one.
Oh, okay.
My aunt is in her late 80s, and her house she purchased like in the 60s, and there was a room addition and a family room that were built not to code. And, you know, her kids are now considering maybe her downsizing. Would that be an as-is sale?
Yeah, yeah.
Probably needs to be inspected first for full disclosure.
The buyer's gonna inspect it, right? I like getting ahead of that buyer. I like knowing things, because I'm going to have to negotiate with that buyer.
Right, because this house is on a double lot, but it's really old, so nobody's gonna wanna move in it the way it is. They're probably gonna do a lot of remodeling because it's really close to the beach, but it is way too old style.
Yeah, you never really know who's gonna buy the house, or you never really know exactly what's gonna happen. The only thing you do know is what similar properties are being listed at and selling for. That's what the buyer's gonna look at, right? I mean, you're gonna say, well, the last one sold for $1 million, right? And they're asking 1.5 for this? They're not even serious, right? But if you're somewhere in that number, right, and they'll go, and you will disclose that ahead of time, right? That there's an addition, it's not permitted, it's not your aunt's problem. It really isn't.
Well, this is the problem. It's gonna go for my cousins, her kids, because they're already thinking ahead because of her ongoing illnesses. But this house is in Carlsbad, and I live in Carlsbad too. And I know the houses that have been for sale in my neighborhood are going well over asking price. And people from out of state are buying them, even as second homes as cash, and not even living in them, but they go really fast just because of the location. The
Right.
location is it.
Location, that's, everybody says, well, what should I do with my home? You know, I'm like, look, you're living in Encinitas. It's taking care of itself. Well, should I do this? Should I do that? You know, why? Right? Or because they'll think that it's something that they need to do. Another cognitive bias, by the way, right? Everybody, I mean, I've been through homes that are pristine, right? And folks are still going, well, maybe if I change that, maybe if I do that. If you want to do something because you have extra time on your hands, go ahead. But don't do it because you think that you're gonna get more money.
Well, that's true, because I know there was one house across the street, it was a one-story, and it was in pristine condition. And the people have been remodeling because it's their own taste. So you could have it perfect and then see somebody, I go, it was a $2 million fixer-upper. I wouldn't have known, but they completely spent a lot of money redecorating it, which was...
One of the points you asked about is on code, you know, it's not up to code. You know, homes along the coast here are older. A lot of them have all kinds of additions that were done. And so it's perfectly fine to sell a home that's not to code. You just have to disclose it. You don't want a buyer to find that out while you're in escrow, because then they're going to try to get you to reduce the price. But if you disclose that up front, then, you know, you can come back if the buyer says, you know, we need to do that. You know, we need money to correct that. We can say, no, you knew that when you made the offer. So, you know, disclosing up front is a really big deal. But don't be afraid of putting homes on the market that have, you know, aren't up to code, they don't have permits. We have homes that happens a lot.
That's why I asked you that question, because my cousins, there's 4 of them, they don't have the financial means to put a lot of money into the house that it really needs, so.
Yeah,
And they won't have the time frame either. If, you know, if they have to make a decision with my aunt, then they would have to sell it right away.
Right, so the one thing they want to do is make sure their realtor knows to find out all the facts up front and get that in the buyer's hands before an offer is accepted.
I don't need the mic here. I can talk loud.
Okay, you talk loud, and then there's another one over here. Steve, go ahead.
In 20 seconds, what's involved in, if you buy a home and there's, say, a room that's not permit, not to code, well, different things, what's involved in that? I mean, do you need to, you know, get the permits after the fact?
Steve, you want?
Yeah, if I understand it right, you've already bought the home, and did you know that it had that problem when you bought it?
Let's say I did.
Okay.
I bought it, it was disclosed, okay, I'll buy it, yeah, I understand I need to permit this. What's involved?
There's two answers to this.
Okay,
One answer is, it's your home. You bought it that way. Enjoy it, right? The other answer is, because somebody from the city, if they could prove, right, that you knew it and they're looking for more revenue, they could come to you and say, I have not heard that done yet, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't take that opportunity. Because I do remember a guy remember Rick's house?
Yes, yes.
This guy built a mansion, right? I mean, it was unbelievable. He built it, right? He was the general contractor, he was doing some of the subwork. Anyhow, he upset his neighbor, right? And his neighbor went to the city and said, do you guys know this guy's building a house over here and he's not permitted for this? He had to dig out footings. Yeah, because they came in and they inspected what they could inspect, right? But they didn't know if the footings were the right size, and he had to go through that. So those sorts of things happen, but I find them to be more cocktail party talk than, I've never run into one of you. Yeah.
So one of the things, back years ago, people did lots without permit. You know, they were doing all kinds of improvements. The city, both Carlsbad, Solana Beach, and Sanitas, all of them are looking for revenue. And they're looking for people trying to do, add on now and stop you and get permits. So it's happening more with if you're doing an addition now, as opposed to going out and finding homes that had improvements done years ago without permits. I haven't heard of that being done unless somebody reports it.
So, I have a question. We bought our house in 1983 and it was new, construction, and it had the polybutylene in it that failed, and we did actually get a settlement and replaced it. But when you talk about disclosures, you go all the way back 40 years. We had a few other leaks after that with the brass plumbing or copper plumbing. How far back do you go in disclosures? And I do have one other question as well.
So you go back as far as you can remember. Even if it's been corrected, you want to disclose that it was done and corrected. Here's an example of one I've heard happened. Somebody had a leaky roof and they had it fixed. And so they figured, oh, I don't need to, disclose that we had it fixed. So ends up they have a leak in the same area. They're out talking to the neighbor, and the neighbor goes, oh, didn't they tell you they had a leaky roof in that area? So it's like anytime you can, and what disclosures are one of the most important things you can do to protect yourself in a real estate transaction. And I can't emphasize that enough. We really believe in making sure that the seller, and often it means me sitting down with them and going step by step and all the different things. What could you possibly know about this and disclose? Because when you're going through a real estate transaction, you get an offer, and it's like the buyer is given those disclosures right up front. And Rick doesn't really like me calling it this, but I call it the honeymoon period. When a buyer first, they're so excited about the house, it's like, this is our dream home, and they see the disclosures, oh yeah, that's fine, oh, we can live with that. It's not until later, either during escrow or after it closes, that they discover it. That's when you have problems.
My other question is, I know in the past it seemed somewhat common that people buying not new construction but existing homes sometimes would purchase like a warranty plan. Are those still common? I don't see are they too expensive now for people to buy, or how often are they?
They're in almost all the transactions. The seller normally pays for it. It's not required. It's not all, but they're still very relevant. Do you have anything to add to that? Yeah. It's a really good insurance. In case you don't know what a home protection plan, home warranty, when a home closes escrow, the seller normally will pay for the protection, it's for a year. So say the buyer moves in and the garbage disposal goes out the next week. The buyer can call this insurance company, and the insurance company comes out and either fixes it or replaces it. And so it's for a year. A lot of times people, after that year goes by, will actually renew it for another year. Like my mom's owned her home a condo that she's now a rental, I don't know, 15, 20 years, and she each year pays for it. So she just likes the idea of not having to replace something major.
Christy, can I add something?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's worth it for the seller to go ahead and pay that $500 or $600 or whatever it is, because then the buyer moves in. Instead of the buyer coming back to the seller and going, my dishwasher broke, the buyer then goes to the home warranty company and takes care of it. So it's worth it for the seller to not have all those things come back to them. And that's why we highly recommend that a seller buy it, because it kind of takes the onus off of them and puts it on the buyer to take care of it themselves.
If you want, you can buy one for your home now.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Oops.
I had a question about the list that you're talking about here. Do you make a legal list, certified and all that, or is this just a random list that you show your real estate person or the person that's buying it?
Are you talking about list of disclosures?
Yes.
So when you hire a realtor, there's actually forms that the California Association of Realtors has put together, and it asks you questions, so it triggers in your mind. You know, it lists the different parts of your house, and then there's two main ones, and occasionally sellers have gone, this seems redundant, yes, but it's worded a little differently, or it's to trigger things in your mind to make sure that you're disclosing it. Often when you've lived in a house a very long time and there are a lot of disclosures, yes, I've had people type it out or handwrite, you know, because the list is long. There's only so many lines on the disclosure. And if you're using a computer, you know, you can do it online, or you can do a hand list of all the different things. But I always encourage people to start those disclosures before you put it on the market, because you're going to think of other things, and then you can add that to it.
Okay, the second question I had, this is not regarding any kind of list or anything, but I had 3 places in my area, you know, within a block or two, sold in the last 6 months. And all of them went for over $1 million. But the thing that I noticed, that people, 2 of them remodeled it before they sold it, and immediately the people that bought it remodeled it again.
That's what I just said.
What's up?
Because everyone has different tastes, and a lot of times when people do remodel, they do it to their taste instead of very neutral. One of the things, when you want to take that? Yeah. Thank you.
I was just trying to think of a better answer. It's one of the things that happens is, and this is just from experience, when we put together a property, right, and we stage it and we fixed all the things that are wrong with it. I can think of one in particular. Matter of fact, that $2.4 million one that I had up there was just like that. It was pristine. People came through and said it was fantastic, and I couldn't figure out why they were willing to pay so much. And the words that came back to me were, it was like buying a new house.
Yeah.
So the feeling that the buyer was having apparently was that they were going to buy something that was in good shape, but it had different carpeting than they wanted. It had different colored paint than they wanted. People have gone so far as to add another wing onto a house, same situation. But from a marketing standpoint, by cleaning all that stuff up front, it makes the buyer a lot more comfortable with what they're buying. Because if they've got stuff, say you're selling your house, and you've got a list of stuff that you've already done on your house, right? You've already fixed all these problems. And maybe you even decided to stage it even, spend money on that. Well, the person that's buying your house is looking at other houses too. Your house is going to be an anchor to their decision, because your house is the one that doesn't need any work. Not that they want to Not that they're gonna not do anything to it, because everybody wants to make that house, their house, right? Things that they want. But remember, when you're on the market, you're selling to a whole bunch of people, hundreds of people. So what we try to do is make the thing as neutral as possible, so that somebody can look at it and say, yeah, but it doesn't have the master bathroom up, right? And there's nothing wrong with the master bath. It looked good, because we have, our stagers are interior decorators, so they're telling us what to do, right? But they're just looking at the market as a whole. You know, you may end up with a buyer that, for some reason, they want dark blue walls inside the house. There's not a designer I know that would ever agree with that. But some homeowners like that. So it's hard to make the call to find out, how do I make this exactly the way that buyer's gonna like it? We don't know who the buyer is, right? There's tens of thousands of buyers out there, so.
Psychological battle, you need to have, fill out an application.
Well, you know, we try to win that psychological battle only by what I was showing, that all the things we do. We have a lot of professionals look at the house, what do we need to do to make the sale happen quicker and easier? You can ask the question, well, what do I need to do to the house so I get more money? That's a specious argument. That's not gonna get you anywhere. But if, say for example, you don't have a dishwasher that works, right? It's a good idea to put one in. House should have a dishwasher, right? That sort of thing. But if you're thinking, and I've had clients do this, on one of those, she got involved with the landscaping contractors and had them do stuff that I didn't agree to. But they wanted, since she was the client, they wanted to do what she was asking for, and they did. But two of those things took some of that property out of code. So I had to disclose what we fixed, and it wasn't to code. But that's the way the seller wanted it. So, deal with a lot of that.
So there's many homes, that we will recommend just selling as is and not doing anything. Because it's in the type of condition that we know somebody's gonna come in and flip it or do an addition or something like that. Doing improvements beforehand, we always try to look at what's the cost of doing an improvement and how much will that help you get back when you go to sell it.
I had a question. So when I was selling my mother's house, the potential buyer's appraiser came out and said, and listed on one of the flaws list, that the oven is outdated. It worked perfectly fine, but it was, maybe from the 1980s rather than current. Is that really something you have to disclose if it works perfectly fine, but it's just, from a different era?
No, and I'm surprised that, are you saying that an appraiser called that out?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, I don't see that very often. As long as it's working, if say a burner was out, also if something's not working and it's a VA loan, a lot of times the appraiser will call that out. They need to go through and make sure everything's in working order and safe. But usually on a conventional loan, I don't see that happen. Tom, can I point you out? Tom does reverse mortgages. Have you seen where an appraiser says like an oven or range is outdated?
It's not typically appliances. I've seen it with the roof life, which is common, something structural, but typically not appliances. They do go in and they will test toilets to make sure the plumbing works. They'll go through that, but not if an appliance is working. They don't typically address that as far as age.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Tom. Another question over here? I'm so sorry, do you want to address?
Margaret, that just gets us right back to a property inspection report, right? The inspector will do all that. And the inspector will show you all the things that he found that needs done, right? And he doesn't even say needs done. He goes, look, this is what another property inspector will point out. If you know what those things are ahead of time, it's a piece of cake. But if they get dropped on you 2 weeks into escrow,
But the inspector's not gonna call out that it's dated,
right?
only if it doesn't work.
Right, okay, yeah.
I have a question on windows. People say you need to replace it with the double pane windows. We don't have double pane windows, but we had to have the pane replaced. And the man from the glass place said he didn't recommend getting double pane windows. So for resale, what do you recommend?
I wouldn't, I don't think I've touched windows on any of the ones that we did. Yeah, go with what you got. Pretty much, I mean, when we talk about, when we're trying to figure out how much money we should spend, we're looking to get $4 back for every dollar we spend. You're not gonna get that on windows, right? You may get a buyer that says during escrow, well, we really like the house, but we want $20,000 for windows. And if I'm your agent, the first thing they're gonna hear is, no, we're canceling escrow and we're gonna put it back on the market. Right? You just don't do it. Matter of fact, it's so weird, when I got into this business, that drove me nuts, right? Because I would fight like hell to get the sale price, right? And I'd get it. And then they come back and say, well, I want another $20,000 for this. Man, my beer bill went way up. I mean, I was going crazy over that. How can you get away with this? What they're asking you for is not even part of that contract that they gave you. It's a separate contract over here that they're saying, well, we want money from you to fix this. No.
So one of the things on windows, if it is cracked, there is a chance an appraiser will call that out, because it's a safety issue. And a lot of people are biased to liking the double pane, and they don't want those. In our house right now, it's half double pane, and we have 3 windows that are single pane, and they're older, but they work perfectly fine. Rick keeps pointing them out. And I'm like, I like the single pane because you never worry about them fogging. I have to say, there's so many homes when we put them on the market, the double pane, the seal has busted or leaking, and it gets fogged inside. And if you have that, you want to make sure to have that on your disclosure, and the buyer knows about it at the time, because that is one thing we often see happen, is a buyer finds out about the fogged window in the middle of escrow, and then they want it replaced because they didn't know about it. Steve?
Encinitas code requires double pane windows now if you're doing new construction.
If you're remodeling or doing new construction, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Steve. Anybody else? Thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate you being here.